On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk Sonos PR issues and Savant partners with Netgear. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek episode 208, Unconditional Love.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Atlona, the go-to provider for AV signal distribution and control in corporate, higher education, and residential spaces.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. This week, I am pleased to be joined by my good friend, Richard Fregosa. He is the principal of Fregosa Design. How are you, sir?
Mellow West Coast greetings. Actually, it's been a little bit, so I'm glad to be back on ResiWeek. Actually, first 2020 ResiWeek for me. So thanks for having me.
I think it's the first 2020 for all of the guests this week. Next, we have Todd Puma. He's the president of the Source Home Theater. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thank you for having me again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. And last and certainly not least, we have Ken Eagle. He is the senior global director of training at Atlona. How are you, sir?
Matt, I'm awesome. Happy 2020, everyone. Glad to be here.
Happy 2020 to all of you. Gentlemen, we're going to kick this off with just a quick note before we jump into our stories of the day. You can see this press release on our site, AVNation.tv. Ken Erdman is joining CEDIA as the Director of Workforce Training. Ken has been doing a ton of training for CEDIA over really the last 25 years. He's been involved with the organization and doing training globally for them. As I said, for 25 years. He is also a recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award and has been a member since 1992. So congratulations to him and to CEDIA. That should be a fantastic match in moving training forward. All right, gentlemen, let's kick this off with really the story that dominated not only our industry channels from the news cycle, but the global tech channels, and kicked off a big conversation about end of life and discontinuing products and all this fun stuff. If you missed it, you can check this out on cepro.com. Sonos has had a position at the start of last week, and then they revised that position with a letter from their CEO, Patrick Spence, talking about essentially 5 products that were going to be or see their support ended in May of this year. Now, the majority of these products are older. They're still in the field, but I know as a Sonos dealer, I haven't sold any of these in 5 years, at least, with the exception of one of them being two of them being the Connect and the Connect Amp. But again, that end of life was only for certain products sold up until 2015. Patrick came back out after a bit of a backlash in a lovely social media hashtag of Sonos boycott, and said that they were not going to brick them and cause these systems to completely stop working in May, essentially clarifying the position of the original message. Ken, I want to start with you as kind of the lone manufacturer here for a second, and then we'll get to Rich and Todd. When you saw this, and I'm assuming you watched this with as much interest as pretty much everyone else, when you saw this, was this literally just a really bad email that was sent out, like a really bad PR campaign for this, or was it a nefarious intent? We all know end of life happens. We all know that products, especially something with RAM and a chip, at some point they will stop functioning with new updates. Is this just bad PR?
I think so. I think somebody maybe didn't think this through all the way. I mean, working for a manufacturer for the last 10, 12 years of my career, the AV side of the business, you're right. Everything comes to an end of life at some point, but you make a decision, when you make that announcement to your customers, what you're going to do with it, what the path is, what's going to be supported, what's not. You would expect a company like Sonos would already know what they're going to say and how to do this. They've probably had some EOLs before in there. So I was a little shocked by that. And then having to have the CEO come back out and make this, hey, the statement, hey, we didn't do this right the first time. That's a lot of egg in the face. It's kind of a big misstep. That being said, I'm guessing somebody probably at some point, got on the Apple bandwagon and thought, you know what, we're not going to support this stuff anymore. We're going to cut it off at some point, and we want people to buy new stuff. I totally get that. That's how the business cycle works. But when you've got people spending the money and you've got a brand like this, you can't leave those people stuck with the product that they believe in, because that's going to come back at you.
Very good. Richie, part of this, and I had some conversations with some people at Sonos about this, and one of the gentlemen I talked to, we got into it, of course, and had a really entertaining conversation about it, but he came back to one thing, that Sonos is a computer. Yeah, it's an amp, yeah, it's a this, yeah, it's a streamer, but at the core, it's a computer. Is this the shift between the old school components of, kind of my early childhood, we'll say childhood, where it's weighted knobs and old, not just warm classic amplifiers that were dumb. There's nothing to them. They're just an amplifier, versus the new concept of everything just being a computer that at some point is going to not be able to keep up.
I think it was a little bit different than that. I think they misjudged their customer loyalty. They figured on customers love Sonos, just completely unconditional. They were looking. They banked on unconditional love of their product, and clients thanking them for pushing the technology. It was the technology itself. I have some misgivings about saying that about the computer. The reason being is that streaming technology hasn't changed. They didn't say we're doing this because we are going to go ahead and focus more on high resolution audio. We're not going to focus on any other new streaming capabilities. I mean, currently the streaming technology has been pretty static, other than, say, moving from AirPlay to AirPlay 2. Okay, that as newer technologies have come in, I could see that. What happened is that they didn't necessarily give enough of a timeline, and it was just scheduling. It was how they laid it out. If they eased into it, they could have created a positive effect. New technologies are coming up. We're moving through, and just they goofed. I mean, they absolutely goofed. However, they acknowledged it and they said we screwed up. That was important in that aspect. There's lots of manufacturers who I've dealt with over many of the years that will never ever admit to a mistake. They will never ever ever admit to a mistake. In fact, rather than to admit to a mistake, they'll just kind of ignore the fact that the thing ever existed more than anything else. So I'm going to give Sonos credit for that, for quickly doing triage on it and saying, you know what, we misstepped. We made a mistake. And they looked at, and one of the interesting things, though, to me, because again, we're on an industry podcast, the pressure wasn't caving into the integrator channel. No, they could have cared less at whether they caved into the integrator channel. It was the end users that they went, holy cow, these people aren't going to go to Target and buy these things. These people aren't going to go to Best Buy and buy these things. These people aren't going to go online and buy these things. That's what caused the bit of the about face. And it really wasn't an about face. It's just they didn't explain at the beginning what they were doing. And so assumptions were made, because they really didn't say we're bricking them. We just said, look, we've reached a certain point with these products that we can't put new features in. We can't move forward with these. So let's say with that. So It was for manufacturers and just for companies in general. It's a great lesson on making sure that you aren't tone deaf to what your clients are actually looking for.
Very good. Todd, you and I actually had a text conversation this morning about this issue with our friend Mark Feinberg as well. You and Mark wrote an article for ResiTech, I believe, or Resi Systems, about 2 weeks ago, if I'm kind of jogging my memory correctly, about reevaluating what products you sell and what you supply to customers. And Mark was going through an issue with a product and had that realization that maybe he needs to look at stuff again. Is this something that, again, I think we've come to the understanding that this is a PR issue, really, more than anything else. It's just really bad way of explaining their intentions. But is something like this something that has that potential to cause at least our industry to circle again and say, is this the best product for us, or is there something else? Or does it come down to the conversation you and I had in the preamble of the show, where like the amp that I have right there is just a fantastic little product, so we're going to keep selling it?
It goes
delta.
It goes down to multiple factors, right? So number one is I have a business to run and I care about my clients, and I want to make sure that there's no variables put into place which can make my solutions fail. With Sonos and leaving all the open-ended questions, when the Sonos Connect comes into play, that once they discontinue and that are integrated with Crestron, does that mean when an update happens in the Crestron platform or any other control platform, is that going to break that communication because updates aren't being allowed through and through, that it's only a partial update, which most likely is coming with the current updates? So what am I going to do at this point with having those products that are in line? I don't have an answer if they're going to break or not. So there's a little bit of fear in that for me. So, the quick thing is we'll upgrade them to the newer solutions. They had this product in line. It is a legacy product, and our customers will understand that. Great. But I still need more answers. Number two, will I stop selling them? I'm not going to stop selling them. Like we talked about at the beginning of the interview, is they do make rock solid products. I barely have to reboot ever anything that's a Sonos related product. Customers don't call about Sonos related issues. It actually gets me back in the door to upgrade and to add more solutions in their home because how great Sonos works and integrates with multiple manufacturers. Another thing that's put into place is Sonos isn't for the integrator channel, I don't believe. They haven't been for us. And from day one, I've been arguing the point is they're more focused on the customer. Like Richie was saying, and multiple people have said in multiple forums and on the web, is they cared only what the customer stated. We are their customers. But if we would have barked, cried, and went on about it, they would have said, shoot, you're dust under the rug, I believe, versus the big uproar that happened because the customers started contacting us in fear. What do I do? What does this mean? They called me stating, is my control system obsolete? They don't know the difference between Crestron or a control manufacturer and Sonos. They believe that it's all one, and with Sonos discontinuing their parts, that they just updated their control system to a newer platform. Now nothing's going to work. So these are things that make it a little bit rocky for us as a business, and that I didn't appreciate at certain points, but I did appreciate because it did open up the door for conversation with our clients and to educate them on what's happening with that, Sonos platform, which everyone loves. Every customer, I don't think you can pull Sonos away from a customer once they have it. Once they experienced it, they're not going to go with anything else.
So let me, just before we move on, let me ask any one of you this question. Is this the inherent risk that we just have to live with, where consumer tech has the ability to, just due to market scale, create products that will be vastly superior to something within our channel, that's our channel only, and we just have to run the risk of them breaking integration at some point because we know it's going to happen? Is that just the bag of tricks we have to go with?
I think you have to consider your client. I think you have to consider the generation of the client that you're dealing with. I would say that if you are dealing with a millennial, or even, I would even say Gen X. I'm Gen X myself. We were the first generation to grow up with computers, like with them in our houses from the time that we were young. And so there is a bit more of an understanding that, yes, upgrades are changing. Subsequent generations, because of the Apple effect, have kind of accepted more of the biodegradable version of technology, which is you're going to get it for X amount of time, and then we're actively going to promote that you get the newer and better one. The Achilles heel is the economy of scale. It's a matter of what devices that you pick as an integrator. And again, this goes back to the integrator channel. You have to choose carefully with what technology you support, the manufacturers you align yourself, but also your client base. And you have to take a look, what's important to them. If they want longevity, that requires a different path and a fallback position. It requires a different level of expectation management. If there's always the adage, right? Cheap, reliable, simple. Pick 2 out of 3. And that really is where you kind of have to approach it with your client at all times with an existing system. How do you break it down? Well, one option is you tell people, again, we're locking this down. You don't get updates. The only time you get updates is after we've vetted something and we've determined that it's not going to break anything. More and more manufacturers are getting away from that. They're just pushing it out. You get it or you get it and you can't keep moving forward. So it's a very fine line for integrators right now. It does come back to being a professional. And being a professional is being able to give your clients the information succinctly and allow them to make an educated decision. A lot of integrators get in trouble where they think that their clients are keeping up on the technology trends as much as they are. That's a bad assumption to make. So it is a constant education process for your client, unless you're going with, the quasi DIY approach. Then it's caveat emptor. It's like, yeah, it's going to be good for now, but a year from now, I can't make any promises. And so you're going to reinvest another $199. Well, maybe it's $199 times 6 or 9. But you don't know, as opposed to potentially more of a customer or bespoke design.
Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.